This is Tambulan. It's a Taiwanese island that's been seized by China. They're using the island as a staging ground for their upcoming invasion of Taiwan. And this is the US Marine unit that's been tasked with taking the island back. These are all players, and there's over 60 of them. They're up against hundreds of Chinese AI who have access to heavy vehicles, machine guns, and tanks. The players will need to pull off a successful naval landing and fight their way through the island, all while outnumbered and outgunned. And while they do that, I'll be watching all of it play out from Zeus. But first, thanks to Opera GX for sponsoring this video. Most browsers feel like an afterthought. They're plain, resource-hungry, and not built with gamers in mind. That's where Opera GX comes in. Opera GX is built different. First off, GX Control lets you cap how much RAM and CPU the browser uses, so if you're gaming with music and tabs open, your system still runs buttery smooth. No stutters, no FPS drops. You can compare it to Chrome in the Task Manager and see the difference yourself. It's also got style. GX Mod lets you fully customize your browser. There's animated wallpapers, background music, custom sounds, even shaders that make it look like your screen's cracked or glitched. You can mix, match, enable, or disable every part in the mods menu. How it looks is completely up to you. And yeah, Opera GX has gotten smarter too. With built-in ChatGPT, you can summarize guides, ask questions, or if you're playing in one of my operations, translate the Mandarin I've been yelling at my players, all without leaving the browser. So stop running default. Use my link in the description or pinned comment to download Opera GX and upgrade your setup. So, what's a Zeus? It's kind of like a Dungeons & Dragons game master. I make the mission, I tell the players what to do, and I command the enemy AI. I can even take direct control of units if I really want to mess with the players. In other words, you can think of me as the Chinese commander. Now, what about the players? Well, their equipment is a bit better than the enemy's, but they're very heavily outnumbered. Because of this, the players' main strength is their discipline and cooperation. They're organized into squads that are organized into platoons that follow the operation leader's orders.
Sting is a pyramid, since time immemorial.
Now their mission today was pretty simple. They were to capture the west of the island, while other marine units captured the rest. To help the players out and even the playing field a bit, they had 3 helicopters, a mortar, and a bunch of boats to get the job done. That's not to say it would be easy though. First off, they only had a total of 75 respawn tickets. That means technically everyone could die once, but that's about it. If everyone died twice, they'd lose. Also, when someone dies, they have to be flown back into their squad by helicopter, which is pretty time consuming and another incentive to, stay alive.
Lois, I'm at the gym. I hate it here. I want to come home. Everybody's so mean, and there's this one guy who follows me around and calls me fat.
Well, I suppose Hang on, honey, I'm getting another call. Hello?
Hey, is Fat Ass home yet? Put him on, I want to talk to him.
Finally, the Chinese forces were pretty heavily dug in. The beaches were nothing but trenches and heavy vehicles, so if they tried a direct assault, it'd go something like this. Now, while that would have been fun for me to watch from Zeus, unfortunately for me, my players are smarter than that. They scouted out the beach ahead of time, saw how fortified the main beaches were, and decided... no. Instead, they chose some smaller, less defended beaches, and decided to split up. One platoon, so half of the players, would land to the east of the Bessar airbase and clear it out, while the other would go all the way to the town and fight through it. Then, once both were done, they'd push north together. Now technically, they'd be exposed to the Chinese forces on this beach on their way in, but they had their helicopters take care of that for them. So with the defenses down, they drove their boats straight in. Now the beaches they chose may have been less defended than the main one, but that didn't mean it was completely defenseless. There were Chinese patrols walking along it, so the players had to quickly defend themselves after landing.
Blue team, break off left. Green team on me. Murphy, stay between us.
With the patrol dead, the players began making their way towards the airbase. Unfortunately though, a machine gun spotted them first.
I'm stable, but I'm bandaging myself right now.
Their squad was pinned down, and their squad leader was taking a nap with a 50 caliber bullet in his head. Now this is where the players' main strength comes in though, their organization. The members of the pinned down squad couldn't even see the machine gun that was engaging them, but the other squad, that was breaching another part of the compound, could. One quick radio call later, and now that they weren't being suppressed anymore, the first squad could finally move forward and push into the airbase. Now, while all this was going on at the airbase, how was the town assault going? Honestly, not very well. Remember those heavier vehicles I mentioned? I'd placed quite a few in the town, and the Chinese AI were going absolutely ham with them. About a third of the players were dead or dying. Now you might be thinking, why don't they just call in their aircraft for CAS, like they did for the beach? Well, they were worried there might be civilians in the town, and they didn't want to risk blowing up some poor guy's family if the pilot missed. Once they confirmed that the town was in fact empty of civilians, the pilots did what they do best. And with the heavier vehicles taken care of, the infantry was now free to clear through the town again. Now let's go back to the airbase, where things had gotten a bit rough. One squad had successfully pushed in from the south, and were clearing through buildings.
There goes Dragon.
The other squad, though, well, they were all huddled together doing medical next to an occupied building. So I took control of one of the AI, and I went to mess with them.
Fine, this is Echo, go ahead.
Since no one was pulling security, I managed to knock out an extra person, even though I was doing my best geriatric gamer impression. Luckily, though, they learned from their lesson and pulled security after, right?
Should I pull security, please? Pretty, please.
No. That wasn't even me, by the way. That was just an AI. Anyway, despite these setbacks, they were soon back to clearing. It was slow, but they went building by building, room by room. Both of the squads took some casualties along the way, too.
No! Dragon's down again!
But soon, the town and airbase were cleared. So, the players had cleared the western tip of the island. They'd taken quite a few casualties in the process, though. They'd used up a quarter of their respawn tickets. Now they would need to push up to about here, while the other Marine units invading the island liberated the rest. Unfortunately, though, things weren't exactly going to plan. The units assaulting the southern island had succeeded their landings. They'd faced very light resistance and were tearing through the center of the island. The Marines landing north, though, had a very different experience. Their landing had went well enough, but they stumbled across Chinese tanks and lapping guns that had been missed by their recon.
Hey, is that a tank or a building?
Man, who cares? Just put building, less paperwork.
So they were promptly sent packing. Those Chinese assets would now be turning their attention on our players, so orders had to change. The players would no longer push as far east, but would instead set themselves up here and defend their side of the island from the incoming counterattack. They still had to clear out the rest of the west first, though, so they set off. Half the players headed to a nearby base to clear it out, while the other half would bypass it and head straight to the location they'd be defending. The players attacking the base had an easy enough time, kind of. Blade got shot in the head while clearing a tower, and Soldier channeled his inner Bill O'Hara.
There's a lot of Chinamen down here!
Just put down John Chinaman and let's get on with it.
But aside from that, very few players died. Things were a bit different for the players in the convoy, though. I wanted to slow them down, so I'd placed an APC on the road in front of them, and I took direct control of it. I also had soldiers all around the forest, just waiting to ambush the convoy. So, once the players were in sight, I just started shooting their drivers in the head. By killing their drivers, the players had to dismount and fight. They couldn't just push straight through, which is what they'd normally do in an ambush. It was glorious. Someone did eventually blow me up, but the damage was done, and the players had to fight their way out of the ambush. By the time the base was cleared, and the ambushed players had made it to their defensive positions, they'd lost over 50% of their respawn tickets, and they still had to defend themselves from the entire Chinese counterattack that was now rushing towards them. The players did have the advantage of being on the defense, though, so they could choose where the battle would take place. They had time to set up trench lines and sandbags, and hell, half the players had even set themselves up in an old castle. When the enemy convoy got in range of their launchers, they let loose. They managed to take out a quarter of the vehicles before they even realized they were in combat. Things weren't perfect, though, because once the tanks realized the players were in the hills, they began firing into them. They killed this poor guy outright and were suppressing the boys behind this trench. I even got in on the fun myself by taking control of an APC with an autocannon and shooting the hell out of a player hiding behind a trench.
I can't do it. I can't take this shit no more, man.
The players were also not only fighting with the mechanized assets on the road, there was also a substantial infantry push coming in from the trees. Every squad was having to pull their weight, firing at the incoming hostiles, and more than a few players were getting shot in turn. Now, my goal as the Zeus for this part was to get them to fall back at least once. If I could do that, I was going to give myself a small symbolic victory at least. To accomplish this goal, I manted up the pressure as high as I could. I started using white phosphorus mortars to clear out the castle. I had APCs cruise their way up to the player's trench line. I sent a helicopter at them and bombed the hell out of the road they were on. Hell, I even took control of an infantryman at the castle and attacked it with my Kozus. Which, yes, I've had a Kozus this whole time. His name is Cal. He gave the players a chance to surrender, and they shot him in the face. So I got revenge for it. Now at this point, the defense was starting to drag a bit. We'd killed quite a few players, but they weren't going to retreat. They'd chosen death before dishonor. And they'd also killed a sizable portion of the Chinese garrison I had. So we decided to try one last thing before calling off the assault. Paratroopers. Would send several helicopters full of special forces to paradrop behind them, at the same time as a heavy attack from the road. If that wasn't enough to make them fall back, nothing would be. So we sent the helicopters. They flew above the castle, and they took the first one out with an AT shot. They also took the second one out with an AT shot. That's like 20 special forces who died before they could even get a chance to fire a shot. And the launcher the players used wasn't even guided, it was just pure skill, I couldn't even be mad. So I took control of the third helicopter and made sure its guys got out, and I even took control of one of them and did as much damage as I could. But it was too little, too late. The assault had failed. I told the remaining Chinese infantry to retreat and had the Chinese forces surrender to the Marines. The players ended the mission with 13 respawn tickets left. They'd lost 82% of their tickets over the course of the op. But it didn't matter because they'd won. They'd completed all their objectives and defeated a massive counterattack. Thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, consider liking and subscribing. A special thank you to my channel members: Midix Lion, Elzak Beg, Scout Trooper, Belmon, Kretus, Mike, Fornicator, Dransky Firefly, Colonel Oddball 27, Doc Omar, Alec Trakler, Taylor Lowe, King Jaeger Blackhand, Brian Bailey, Altonio, Salman Al-Zayed, Agent Parrot, and the Green Tea. Without you, none of this would be possible, so thank you so much for your support.